Ghana, it is time for me to share my blunt thoughts with you this morning. And let me just let you know that I've started a series. I, together with my team, thought about this, that ahead of the elections, today, next Friday, the Friday before Election Day, Saturday, we're going to be sharing what we have put together as far as the major political parties. I'm talking about the NDC and the MPP. Their manifestos are concerned. And so today we're going to take part one, next week part two on different sectors, and the last week part three. And that's why I've titled my blunt thoughts this morning, My Manifesto Series, helping you read between the lines ahead of election 2024. My Manifesto Series, helping you read between the lines ahead of election 2024. And today I serve you part one. It's a cocktail of a number of matters, analysis. You want to stay with me because I'll be going very, very quickly. Today I'm looking at health, I'm looking at education, I'm looking at energy. And those are the three key areas I'm contemplating. But let's start with this. Our own manifesto tracker, the checks we've conducted, guess what? If you look at the promises made in the two parties' manifestos, at least for the MPP, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, you have 380 and at least 680 for John Dramani Mahama. That's a difference of about 300. And we're saying at least because, look, that's a summary of everything. But what accounts for this? Let's look at the historical antecedents. In the next slide, this is the trend from 2012 to 2024 as far as the NDC's party manifesto promises are concerned. 569 in 2012, 666 in 2016, 617 in 2020, 680 in 2024. So if you look at the trajectory, it has followed a certain pattern for the NDC. Apart from 2012, where they were slightly below 600, it's always been in the 600s. But if you go to the MPP, what we have from 2020 to 2024 shows that they are also sticking to their pattern. In 2020, 223 promises made. In 2024, 380. Next slide. But now, let's get to the sectors that we've targeted, starting with health. The number of promises the MPP makes in its manifesto, 52. The NDC, 111. No, it's not Agenda 111. It is 111 of those promises on health. Next slide. The top 5 promises from the MPP include the following. Completing all Agenda 111 hospitals, and that is assuming Dr. Bawumia gets the nod. That's what they say they will do. Recruiting more healthcare professionals. We know of the status of that. Bringing healthcare services to your doorstep. Incentives, one healthcare worker, one vehicle. So let's say 1H, 1V. We have another one something, one something. You remember one village, one dam and all that. That's another one, but in the healthcare system. And then 5, amending the NHIA Act to establish a separate health insurance regulatory body. These are the core promises on health from the MPP. Let's go to the next slide and see what the NDC is promising. They are promising to decollateralize the National Health Insurance Levy. And there's been a lot of talk about decollateralization as far as the levy is concerned. Review and integrate mental health into primary healthcare. So bring it to the primary level. Develop a health worker migration policy framework to facilitate ethical migration. You know what I'm talking about. Then remove taxes and tariffs on vaccine and medical donations to public health facilities. And part of that we saw in our recent standoff where we had vaccines stuck at the ports. And then amend the NHIA Act to establish a separate health insurance regulatory body. So you see that both of them have this final bit in their manifestos. Now, if you go to the next slide, if you do the juxtaposition, the side-by-side analysis on health, the MPP's 2024 manifesto has little emphasis on mental health. But the NDC's 2024 manifesto mentions increasing access to mental health care and establishing facilities. But their problem is that they show a lack of funding commitment. How are you going to do it? You're going to do it. Good idea. Brilliant. Light bulb. How? Where's the funding? That's where the devil is. Next slide. Again, you look at the MPP's manifesto, it highlights past hospital projects, which is a good thing because, mind you, there's Agenda 111, and they are hoping, if they get the nod, to continue with those, in addition to any others that may exist. But this framework lacks clear future proposals. How will it be done? What shape will it take? It's up in the air. It's not so clear. If you come to the NDC's manifesto, there are plans to complete CHIPS compounds, and you know of their relevance, especially in remote areas, and upgrade hospitals. So pretty much some plans in there. But if you go to the next slide as well, then you would see that the pathway to universal health coverage by 2030, that is the goal, not just for Ghana, but what inroads have we made? According to the 2024 manifesto of the MPP, there is a focus on more infrastructure and NHIS reforms, but less on equitable access. So, more infrastructure, yes, but how about access? How is that going to go hand in hand? Because as you have more, there must be a rise in access as well. It doesn't necessarily coincide. There must be actions that bring these two into alignment. For the NDC's 2024 manifesto, it emphasizes expanding access, improving health financing, and strengthening primary care services. So, similar plans, but some more detailed than others. Next slide. Now, if you look at the comparative analysis when it comes to health budgetary allocation, there's a story here. Because in 2009, the allocation for health was 0.921 billion. That's 921 million Ghana cedis. In 2016, that shot up under the NDC to 4.9 billion Ghana cedis. That was a 432% giant leap. But you come to the MPP, 4.2 billion in 2017, so just a little drop from 2016. But they also shot it up by 2024 to 15.6 billion Ghana cedis. That's a 271.43 or 34 percentage point increment. So you see that both of them have increased their budgetary spending, and the planning as well has also increased in their manifestos and the rationale. If you go to the next slide now, we'll also look at the estimated cost over 4 years when it comes to health and what the parties are proposing. If you look at what the MPP is proposing, it will cost us some $13.9 billion. If you look at what the NDC is proposing, it will cost us $18.5 billion. So you have to weigh, gauge, and find out which will serve you better. Next slide. Now, let's do education. This has also come to the fore, and when you see the adverts, even on our platform and other platforms, there's talk about free SHS and this and that. But what have the parties been saying? What are the deliverables? And if they win, what are they hoping to do? Do you know? That's why I'm here. The MPP has made 54 promises under the banner of education. Under the umbrella of education, the NDC has made 125 of those promises. What are they saying? Key components. Let's go. Now, the benchmark, if you look at the education manifestos, the benchmark, we are looking at early childhood education, crucial. Equal access to higher education at all levels. 25% of national budgets for education. 25%, that's a quarter. And then eliminating gender disparities by 2030 so that there can be equality or equity, if you like, on that level. Equipping youth with relevant skills for decent work so that the youth are skilled enough to be able to do something with and for themselves. But what are the parties saying? There's also a focus on early education. Now, the big problem is this. Stay with me. 10% of kindergarten-age children are not in school. That's 1 in 10. There are inadequate TLRS, or what I should say, teaching and learning resources. They are woefully inadequate. Teachers themselves, there's a paucity of same, and then pedagogy and infrastructure are also problematic, thematic areas. Now, having laid this foundation, if you look at our secondary education, it's also bedeviled with exam malpractices, especially at the WASI level. Free SHS has had problems with a double track system. Feeding, and we've seen part of that, school placement and then curriculum and teaching and learning resources. All of these are problematic areas when it comes to secondary education. Next level, let's go. Now, if you focus on the tertiary level, so we've done basic secondary, what are the problems bedeviling the tertiary sector? Low gross tertiary enrollment of about 12% against a target of about 40% by 2030. That leaves us with a deficit of about 28%. Are we going to be able to catch up by what? 6 years' time? That's the question. Financial access barriers when it comes to tertiary education. And both parties, NDC and NPP, have spoken about free tertiary education. But which one do you believe? And can it be done within the scope of where we are economically? Accommodation deficits. Even my alma mater, the University of Ghana, has that. And if we had more, we'd be able to also, get more students. And finally, inadequate financing of tertiary institutions. This has been the bane, one of the banes of our tertiary education. But let's now look at what the parties are saying. The MPP's top 6 promises when it comes to education. 1, continue free SHS or the TVET policy, right? Training, vocational training. Establish an open university, like you would find, there's this open university where people can have more access to tertiary education, among others. Build technology hubs, and the Vice President has been speaking, a lot about such technology hubs and the role they would play. Next slide. Revamp schools in underserved areas. Free tertiary education for persons with disabilities, and I just made mention of that, but theirs is also specifically targeting persons with disabilities, and a national service exemptions, okay, in this category. What is the NDC saying as far as their top promises are concerned? Let's go to the next slide. Extend free SHS to private SHS and end the double track system. So they are saying we are retaining it, but we are extending it to private SHS and ending the double track system. Train 1 million youth in digital skills, no academic fees for first year public tertiary students. So you see the juxtapositions. You go to the next few ones. Let's go to the next slide. Let's go to the next slide if we may. And so if you do the comparative, the MPP is saying we'll continue free SHS and TVET. There will be free tertiary education for persons with disabilities. We're expanding the student loan eligibility. And we are also integrating scholarship databases so that they can function as one. The NDC is saying we're going to extend free SHS to private SHS institutions. Free tertiary education for persons with disabilities, so they both have that. Reintroduction of Student Loan Trust Fund Plus, okay? And then, if you remember the Student Trust Loan Fund, and then reform the scholarships regime to take away some of the rot that we've seen in the system. So you look at it and similar ideas, but the devil is always in the detail. Let's go to the next slide. The MPP says it will implement a new school curricula, part of what we've seen in the making so far, and increase accommodation in public tertiary institutions. The NDC is going to prioritize skills in curricular reform and then implement a bed for all program. Both of them promising relevant issues. But the bed situation is a critical one, especially with the numbers that free SHS is bringing, not just at the secondary level, but at the tertiary level as well. Beds, where will they sleep? And we know the situation, so I'm not going to belabor the point. Next slide. Now, if you look at comparative analysis of the education budgetary allocations that we're talking about, in 2009, 1.69 billion. In 2016, it was brought to 7.55 billion, an increment of 346%. In 2017, under Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, 8.33 billion was the figure for 2017. By 2024, we were looking at 29.5 billion Ghana cedis, an increment of 254%. Both of them adding on to the contributions when it comes to education. Next slide. So we've done health, we've done education. I'm giving you the final breakdown on energy, and then we'll cap it off from there. Remember, this is part 1 of the manifesto analysis. Next week, the week after that, we'll conclude for you. If you look at the MPP, the number of promises made in energy, 32. Here, it is close. For the NDC, it is 31. But what are the dynamics? Key focus, focal areas. Let's go to the next slide. The NPP is targeting 2028, 4 years from now, for universal electrification everywhere. The NDC is targeting universal electrification by next year, 2025. How are they going to achieve this? There are interesting dynamics, but let's go to the next slide. In terms of power generation expansion and reliability, the NPP hopes to boost power generation capacity, but include more specific industrial support with tariff restructuring. Now, when you hear tariff restructuring, you know what that means. That could lower commercial rates for those who are into business, production, industry, right? But for the rest of us, it may not necessarily be the same, as we've seen from the PURC and the different gradations of electricity tariffs. When it comes to the NDC, they say they are focusing on expanding mini hydro, portable hydro networks, thermal and renewable power sources to meet rising demand. And both of them are hoping, the NPP in 2028, the NDC in 2025, to give universal electrification. Which one do you believe? That's up to you. Next slide. Then, in terms of power generation expansion and reliability, the NPP proposes reforms in fuel procurement. And this is a tricky area. There's a lot of corruption in this sector. Fuel procurement for power generation. Okay? The NDC is looking at making hydropower, water, more accessible and affordable, especially for vulnerable communities, those most in need. Again, similarities, but then you look at the different proposals. Like I say, some seem to suggest more action, palpable action, than others. In the end, you get to decide with your thumb. Next slide. Again, in terms of renewable energy initiatives, the NPP has set a specific goal, very specific, of introducing 2,000 megawatts of solar power. For the NDC, they are hoping to exceed the 10% renewable energy target in the national energy mix. So 10% is the goal. They are hoping to exceed that as far as renewable energy is concerned. The NPP is saying we are going to introduce 2,000 megawatts of solar power. So they are looking at the energy mix and superseding what the target is. The NPP is looking at harnessing the power of solar power. Let's go to the next slide. Now, if you look at this final slide and the sector regulation and governance issues, the NPP suggests mergers and digitization. I guess digital has become the new catchphrase. Mergers and digitization as far as regulation and governance of that sector is concerned. What's the NDC looking at? Increasing transparency in the allocation of exploration and production rights. So this is the tail of the tape when it comes to health, when it comes to education, when it comes to energy. Just giving you a breakdown because a lot of you may not have the time or put in the effort to read the party manifestos. But this, essentially, is what the parties are saying. Now, you must decide ahead of the elections when it comes to energy, when it comes to education, when it comes to health. Which of these will serve you the best ahead of the elections and where your thumb should go? Like I said, I'm not here telling you what to do, but I'm here to enlighten you so that as you go into that booth, you know what to do. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. Thank you for staying with me for part 1 of these blunt thoughts. Like I said, next week Friday and the Friday after that, the day before election day, I'll serve you part 3, the final part, and then you get to go and vote and decide. May God bless Ghana and make her great and strong. Thank you for watching.